Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fueling Your Legacy. I just am so excited to be here today. It took me almost 45 minutes to get to work again today because it is snowing, or was snowing all night. There was about a foot of snow outside of my house when I finally got outside to go to work. And I do not have snow boots. And the somewhat snow boots that I had were in my car, and I had to run through the snow, 1 foot of snow in my dress shoes. My pant legs and my socks were covered in snow, almost frozen to my leg. Kind of crazy. Cars were getting stuck in my roundabout, and I decided I was going to brave it because I had things to do, and I wanted to get out and work. And I figured that the roads would not be as bad as the parking lot where I live. So it was true. And when I finally got out of my driveway, then the roads were just fine. But it is important to know that if you're traveling today, be careful. There's supposed to be more snow tomorrow and then more snow on Friday. And it is just going to be snowing this whole week, hopefully. I love the moisture. I don't regret or fear the snow, but it does make things a little bit more difficult. So be safe out there if you guys are on the roads and you're somewhere where it snows. If you're listening to this where it doesn't snow, then you're kind of lucky because you probably don't have the same issues we have when it doesn't snow. But on Fueling Your Legacy today, as I talked about on Monday, we're going to be talking about the power of storytelling, the book by Ty Bennett. And then this week on Friday, we're actually going to hear from Ty Bennett himself and hear how he tells stories. I first came in contact with Ty about 1.5 years ago. He came and spoke at a Toastmasters group that I was attending. And I was kind of just mesmerized by some of the things he did and how he introduced the story and how he set the scene for a story. And I realized then that the importance of storytelling when it comes to creating a legacy. I've talked before about the need to create an identity, the need for branding to create a story around what you're trying to accomplish. And the one thing that helps the most is being able to tell your story in a short, memorable fashion. I talked on Monday about how Jesus Christ is one of the best storytellers I know. He's able to condense a meaningful story with lots of value, lots of meaning down into a short 1 to 2, maybe 3 verses of scripture, equaling up to 40 to 60 words, right? That ability is what we all need to learn so that we can easily transfer what we want our legacy to be to the next generation, and to not just the next generation, but everybody we meet. Because as we're able to transfer this incredibly masterfully told, memorable story to other people, then we actually are able to grow our business, grow our influence, grow our legacy, and we'll be remembered by more and more people, which is, I think, ultimately the goal of building a legacy. And we're going to have a lot more meaning in people's lives. I've been listening to some different podcasts, and it's funny when people will be like, oh, and this person said this. And you're like, that is not the person that quote came from. So some legacies, they live beyond the person, right? Sometimes the person being quoted doesn't actually get their name said along with the quote, and somebody else gets attributed to the quote because they were better at marketing it. And that can happen. But what's important is your message, is your meaning, is what you lived for and stood for in your life. Is that being transferred, and how are you transferring that? And so that's something that I learned from reading this book. I finished the book probably about 1.5 months ago, and it's just incredible. And it's something that I will probably go back and read regularly because it's just so impactful. You can read it 3 or 4 times, and it's one of those books that you're just not going to ever get enough of. And it applies to everything in your life. It doesn't just apply to business. It doesn't just apply to your family. It literally applies to every situation in your life. Anytime you need to convey something to another individual, stories are one of the most masterful, memorable ways to convey that story. And that's what I learned the most as I was doing public speaking, by just making a few little tweaks to my speaking and the way I was telling my stories. I was able to really increase my income from speaking and get people more engaged, get people more committed to working with me just by the stories I told that created more gelling, more connection, more impact in those lives. And then they were more excited to work with me at the end of it. So with that being said, I do want to just touch on a few different points that I have used and adopted from these stories. So in the past, you've heard me tell a few different stories. One, my mom and me learning my ABCs. And the other one is my wife and I, when we were dating and making the commitment, kind of moving up there. So before I would tell the story, very, very kind of bland, just say we were on a mountain bike ride, and she had, my wife, before she was my wife, Charlie, had made a comment that she was getting tired and that I could go to the top of the mountain and that she would catch up. And I stopped and I said, hey, look, I don't want to be part of anything. I don't want to be part of a relationship where the underlying principle is that one of us is going to go ahead and wait for the other one. I want to be in a relationship where we work together, right? And so I made that clear on the third date with my wife and I. And as a result of that, she said, oh, that's not what I meant. And we worked it out. We talked about it and we had a wonderful date, and now we're married and we have a great marriage. So that's how I used to tell the story. Well, going through this book and learning really how and the key points to telling a meaningful story, a memorable story, this is now how I tell the story in most cases. Okay? So I'm going to see if you can detect the changes. Okay, so just imagine placing yourself, you're now in kind of a wooded area, you're a bird up in a tree, and you're looking down on this scene. Okay, there's two people riding a bike, me and my wife. My wife is ahead of me and I'm behind. And we are about 20 minutes into this bike ride and we're starting to get tired. We're sweating. We're working really hard and we're just moving pretty slow because she's in front and this is her first bike ride in a few months. And for me, I've been doing this bike ride about once or twice a week. So I'm very conditioned at it. She's exhausted. So this is kind of what's going on. And you can imagine her just turning her head, you're turning back to yell and say, hey, Sam, I'm really tired. You can just go ahead and I'll meet you at the top. I don't want to hold you back. And then as soon as I hear this, now I'm the rider in the back, I stop the bike. I just stop pedaling and I call ahead and say, hey, Charlie, what did you just say? Did you just say that I could go ahead and that you would catch up? And then she calls back, yep, that's what I said. I'm just really tired. I'm exhausted. And then I respond, I disagree with that principle. She's like, what principle? What are you talking about? Well, here's the deal. I have some things in my life that I struggle with. And there's some people, I need people I'm looking for a wife who's willing to be there with me and struggle with me through those things and be there for me, hold my hand and carry me. And I imagine that I'm going to have to do that for my wife as well. And so that's the type of relationship that I'm looking for. So I just need to know right now, is that something you can see yourself being a part of? Or are you going to continue to believe that you can go ahead when you're doing good and that I can go ahead when I'm doing good and the other person's just going to hang back? Because if that's the case, then this date's over and we can just turn our bikes around right now and go back home. And at this point, she's noticeably shocked. You can see it in her face. And she's like, no, that's not what I meant. She starts explaining. And we sat and we talked about it for a little bit. Man, I'm so grateful that I was able to be upfront with my wife because what I learned from this experience is the importance of unity and the importance of moving forward. And in a relationship, whether it's business or family or religion, whatever it is, we all are going to struggle with things. And I know that I'm 100% committed to being there for you when you're struggling, but I expect that same commitment. I want 100% commitment in this relationship. And with that, she said, that makes sense. And we were able to go on our way. And now we have a wonderful marriage. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's hard times for sure, but it's been a great thing. And I think that you can have those same relationships in your life with anybody. Okay. So that's now how I tell the story. And just think of the difference, how much more memorable the second story is from the first story, the different elements of being able to see the scene, being able to be part of the scene, being part of that dialogue, right? So that is what Ty Bennett teaches in this book. He really teaches the simple things the little tweaking of the story. Is the major content still the same? We were mountain biking, went up a mountain. She was tired. I was not going to let myself go ahead and leave her behind. I didn't want her to leave me behind. And we had a great date and now we're married, right? That's the core content. But all of the things that make that story memorable, I was eliminating for the sake of saving time probably. But in reality, when you cut your story down to save time, then you don't actually accomplish the memory as much. Now, if you're cutting your story down and you're just choosing the most impactful words and you're placing them at the right time with the pauses and everything, then you can have a short story and it can be majorly impactful. And that's really where the power of storytelling comes in. So I want to just share two things that he shares in this book as far as principles that will make your story more memorable. One is movement. And movement, basically, when we're talking about movement, is talking about the progression of the story, right? So we started the story when we started going mountain biking. We were in it 20 minutes. So now I moved you 20 minutes into it. I expressed the difference in change of state. We were now sweating. We were exhausted. So that's the movement of the story. We stopped. We paused in the movement of the story to have this dialogue. Then we continued that story, and now the end movement of that is we're married and we have a great relationship. So that's the movement of that story. The next thing is metaphors. Okay, so the metaphor of the story, the actual story is a great metaphor, but then there's also a hidden metaphor. The metaphor of me going to the top of the mountain without her and her catching up. Now the hidden metaphor in there is, well, in your relationship, who is going ahead and not staying back to support the struggling spouse or struggling business partner or struggling coach and coachee, right? Who is just moving ahead and not being there for them. So that's a hidden metaphor inside of that story it's almost the whole story is the metaphor of how we can take this thing and relate it to another portion of our life so we can gain greater relationships. And so metaphors are great for teaching because they're memorable and they often attach a funny story or a serious story, some type of story to an important principle that can be lived throughout our life. And that's what I originally caught on to when she mentioned this was the principle of that she was thinking that one person could go ahead. And as a principle, the way you do one thing in your life is generally the way you do many things or all things in your life. And so if she was willing to allow that principle persist in her life in this one instance, it probably was going to show up in other areas of her life. And I knew at that point in my life that I had things that are hard to accept for some people. And I didn't want to be in a relationship with somebody who wasn't going to accept and work with me on some of those things from my past. And so that is really the power of storytelling. I just barely scratched the surface there. He goes over so many different things. I mean, if I'm to just read kind of the table of contents, you can see what you're going to get when you go and read this book. If you've ever wanted to become a better storyteller for your grandchildren or just for your business to help your employees be more committed to their jobs, and see the vision of the legacy of the company that you're trying to build or create a legacy that's going to be passed down easily. See, I think what's interesting before we go into the table of contents here, most of the history that we have, whether it's ancient Indian history, American Indian history, Chinese history, I mean, most of this stuff is not down in writing. I mean, it is now, but when it was being passed down, it was being passed down in the form of stories. These wise men, wise grandfather figures or spiritual leaders, they would tell stories to make it easily transferable and get these messages across. And that is why it's so important. We are, from a biological, evolutionary perspective, we are programmed to respond and engage in storytelling. And so being a master of that is essential. Unfortunately, because of the technology we have and everything, books, we've gotten out of that habit as a general public, and we need to step back into it because it's going to greatly increase our lives. But just a few things that he teaches in here is understanding the influence of a story. If you're struggling with understanding why this is important, absolutely need to read the book. The science of storytelling. So he goes through the mechanics and the science of storytelling and how it's so impactful to us. Using the 5 places to use stories, how to use them when conveying a message, and then how to build a story, the skill set of it, the foundation, the blueprint, and then the delivery. And then the tool set that he gives you, the different tools. I just told you the last one, how to make stories memorable, but there's also how to make stories compelling, how to create change in somebody as they hear the story, and then how to make them dynamic, how to make them exciting for somebody to listen to. Nobody wants to listen to a monotone, boring story. They want to hear something that's exciting and something that's really, really driving them to become a better person. And so that is, in a nutshell, what I took away from the power of storytelling. I strongly encourage you to go take a look at this. And then also on Friday, we are going to have access to Ty Bennett. He's going to be on the podcast. Man, I'm so excited for this. If you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. Make sure you see that exactly when it comes out. And then you can comment, review, take a screenshot, and share it on social media. That way, Ty Bennett can also get a little recognition. I just love what he's doing, and I want him to get as much publicity as possible because he changed my life. But also, I'll give you a shout out on the podcast as you do that. Nicola Stacy is a wizard at this. She is always commenting on my posts on Facebook and on Instagram, and she's very, very active in that community. I'm so grateful for her. So thank you, Nicola. And as we continue to share this message, more people are going to be able to share their message in an impactful, meaningful way. And more people are going to be able to see the wonderful legacies that are out there. I mean, this is why I'm so passionate about it. I've just met too many people who haven't been able to tell their story because they don't know how, but their story is absolutely moving, incredible, transforming of anybody who hears it. And so I want other people to be able to hear those legacies and have them just spread the good and the love throughout the whole world. And that's why I do this. I do this to help people have the habits, mindsets, and behaviors to take what's important for them and what's inside of their inner identity and turn it into a legacy and legicize their life, because in doing so, more people are going to have love, joy, and happiness in their life when they get to know you and the things that you stand for. So again, like, comment, and share. Leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you're listening to this. I know this is going to impact and change thousands of lives as we get the message out there. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.